All right, let's get right into it. In cybersecurity, we pour tons of money into fancy tech, right? Firewalls, encryption, all that stuff. But what if the biggest security hole, and maybe our biggest secret weapon, isn't a piece of software at all? What if it's the person sitting at the keyboard? We're going to talk about how to turn that human element from a huge risk into your strongest line of defense.
Hey, this isn't just some theory. The numbers don't lie. Industry surveys show time and time again that people are at the heart of most major security breaches. Sometimes it's a simple mistake, sometimes they just don't know the rules, and yeah, sometimes it's on purpose. It's a pretty stark reminder that you can't just buy tech to solve this problem.
So, that's the big question, isn't it? If we know people are the wild card in this whole security game, how do we flip the script? How do we get them engaged and trained up and build a culture where they actually become a proactive, thinking human firewall? Well, let's break down how to do just that.
Okay, so the first piece of this puzzle is realizing that building a human firewall isn't about a one-and-done training video. Nope, it's got to be a continuous process, a learning journey that grows and changes over time. And it all starts with understanding the massive difference between awareness, training, and education.
I mean, think about it this way. You wouldn't give a brand new hire the same deep dive security briefing you'd give to a senior IT pro, would you? Of course not. The learning has to be a continuum, something that starts with the absolute basics and gets deeper and more complex as an employee's role in the company grows.
And this slide lays out those 3 stages perfectly. First up, you've got awareness. That's all about knowing what the rules are, what the risks are. Then you move into training, which teaches people how to do their job securely day in and day out. And finally, you get to education, which dives into the deep, underlying why of it all. This is for your security pros.
Now, what's so cool about this breakdown is how clear the differences are. Awareness is all about recognition. You know, stuff like posters, emails, just getting the ideas out there. Training is where you build actual skills, like learning to spot a phishing email a mile away. But education, that's about getting a deep conceptual understanding that shapes strategy for the long haul. Each level has a totally different goal and a different kind of impact.
So that first step, awareness, is all about laying the groundwork. And it's not just about a list of rules. It's about making sure everyone understands why their role is so critical. It's about being upfront that yes, activities will be monitored. But maybe most importantly, it's about building a culture where speaking up about a potential problem is seen as being responsible, not as being a troublemaker. That's huge.
All right, so let's see how all this fits into the big picture, the entire life of an employee at a company. Because good security isn't just a topic for an annual meeting. It has to be woven into every single stage of employment, from the day someone applies for a job to the day they walk out the door for the last time. This timeline here is the perfect roadmap. You start at the beginning, during the hiring process. That means doing your due diligence with background checks and making sure new hires sign clear security agreements. Then, while they're employed, you're constantly applying those core security principles. And when they leave, you need a rock-solid process to make sure all their access is shut down immediately and completely.
Now, during that middle phase, during employment, 2 principles are just non-negotiable. First is least privilege. It's super simple. Just give people access to the absolute minimum they need to do their job. Nothing more. Why? Because if their account ever gets hacked, the damage is contained. The other is separation of duties. This just means you don't let the fox guard the henhouse. The person who checks for security problems can't also be the person in a position to cause them. It's all about creating those checks and balances.
And that last stage, termination, has to be a strict by-the-book checklist every single time. We're not just talking about turning off a password. We're talking about scrubbing their name from every access list, getting back every single keycard, laptop, and phone, maybe even changing the physical locks, and making sure everyone who needs to know knows they're gone. You miss one step here, and you've left a door wide open.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about the tools we all use every single day. Email and the internet. Look, using them casually can open up massive risks. Everything from malware to accidentally leaking sensitive data. And that's exactly why having crystal clear policies isn't just a nice to have, it's an absolute must. So, what really makes a policy strong and, actually enforceable? Well, it really just comes down to laying out a few foundational rules that leave absolutely no gray area. Rule number 1 is the bedrock of it all. When you are on a company computer, on a company network, you have zero expectation of privacy, period. Every email you send, every file you save, it's all considered company property. And you have to spell that out, loud and clear.
And building right on top of that is rule number 2. The company has rights. The organization has to reserve the right to monitor, inspect, copy, or even block anything on its systems. This is absolutely essential for things like investigating a security incident or just protecting the company's assets.
And last but not least, the policy has to draw a hard line on what's forbidden. This means no illegal stuff, no harassment, and definitely no leaking confidential company info. Getting this down in writing is absolutely critical, not just for security, but for covering the company's legal basis too.
So far, pretty much everything we've talked about has been about prevention. But let's be real, no defense is ever going to be 100% perfect. So what happens when something bad does get through? Having a well-defined, well-practiced incident response plan is what separates a minor headache from a full-blown catastrophe.
First things first, we need to know what we're talking about. A computer security incident isn't just some massive movie-style hack. No, it's any violation of your security policies, or even the imminent threat of a violation. It could be anything from a virus spreading to a single lost laptop.
The process for handling these incidents can really be boiled down to 4 key steps. First, you have to detect it, find out it's happening. Then you triage it. Is this a 5-alarm fire or a minor issue? You sort and prioritize. Next, you respond. You jump in and take action to contain the damage and fix the problem. And finally, and this is so important, you document everything so you can learn from it and make sure it doesn't happen again.
And what kind of incidents are we talking about? Well, malicious code, viruses and worms, that's usually the biggest chunk. After that comes unauthorized access, denial of service attacks, and then you've got people just using systems in ways they're not supposed to. A really good response plan has to be ready for all of these. So when you pull it all together, the training, the lifecycle management, the policies, the emergency plans, you get to the real heart of the matter. The technology is just a tool. Real, effective security, that comes from building a culture where every single person understands that they have a role to play. A culture where security is truly a shared responsibility.
And that really just leaves us with one last question to think about. It's not about what software you have installed or how thick your firewalls are. The real question you should be asking yourself is, how strong are your people? How strong is your human firewall? Because at the end of the day, that might just be the most important security measure you have.